Hey there, Scott Paradis here. I'm continuing with my project on the money game. And I wanted to talk to you today. Well, I just want to, you can see the sun shining, so that's a good thing. But I also have my dog here right next to me. So if there's a little bit of a distraction, I apologize for that. But I wanted to continue with this idea of what is the most important thing. I'm using a chart that you are likely familiar with. Some of you saw this in the Stephen Covey Seven Habits Highly Effective People, or it's known as the Eisenhower Matrix, decision matrix. And that is taking what's important and comparing it to what is urgent. And then we put things, our priorities, in their boxes on this matrix, and you can help manage your time by using this decision matrix. But I want to apply it to us, help us determine what the most important thing, or at least what we say is the most important thing. And you'll see how that relates back to the money game. So let's look at our chart here for just a second. So we have what's important and urgent are things that are in crisis, that are imminent deadlines, that have high impact or significant consequences. Those would be things that are urgent and important. Things that are important but not so pressing, not so urgent, would be our things like our goals, our relationship building, new opportunities. Those are all important things, but not necessarily absolutely urgent, imminent, things we must do now. Moving to the not important but urgent, of course, are those interruptions. That's when others present their priorities to you and they become now something that gets your attention. So they move from the what isn't in your attention at all to something that is now urgent because somebody's grabbed your attention. Most of the emails that we deal with and texts that we deal with are somebody else's priority, not necessarily your priority. And some of the meetings, same thing. They're somebody else's priority, not necessarily your priority, but because you're involved in them now, they are urgent because they're right in front of you. Then, of course, we have the not important and the not urgent. That's the busy work. That is really most of the meetings, most of the emails and texts, and most of those distractions that we have on a daily basis. Most of those things are not important and not urgent. So how do we deal with these things? How do we manage our time? Well, it's very simple. The important and urgent things we do now. The important but not urgent things we schedule so that they can move into the important and urgent things, and we will do them in priority. Then for the not important things that are not urgent, we delegate those. Those are also those things that maybe you are not the best at and would require you to put a lot of time, energy, and effort into. You could delegate those to someone else who could do those things more effectively. And then the not urgent and the not important, we just eliminate those altogether. So this is our decision matrix. But now let's apply that to our priorities in life. Looking at this, we're going to spin it around to look at it a different way. So urgent and important. Air, water, food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security. Those are things we need now, immediately. We will take action to get those things if we do not have those things. The things that this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs in my important line here, those things that we typically say are not urgent, but they are important. Other things are relationships, our connection with other people, status, esteem, and ultimately our fulfillment. Those are all important things, but aren't necessarily urgent, causing us to take action right away. That's what I have laid out as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They're all important, but we have a time sense. Now, those things that are not important but urgent are things that are thrust upon us by the environment, by circumstance, by other people and other people's priorities. They cause demands on us that get our attention. So they become urgent. Again, not necessarily our priorities, but now just by the circumstance in the environment, they have become priorities. The not urgent and not important are those trivial, frivolous kinds of things. We look at all of these things, and it's interesting when you compare the urgent and the important. Once you have them, they will leave that quadrant altogether. Because once we have it, it's no longer important to us, and something else will move into that priority. I have a question for you. What is the common denominator between all of these things? So your tasks that I showed you in the previous in the previous quad chart, or now these wants and needs that we have in our lives. What is the common denominator to all of those things? In our prosperous society, we look at these things and we would say, well, let's substitute for the urgent and important things. I need a job, an income, a means to get those things, right? I need something now that'll help me get that. We think about car and transportation. I need those things to have a job, to have means to acquire what I want and need. Or I've got to have a home. A home. Where am I going to sleep tonight? So that's an important and urgent thing. If I have those, however, it'll move out of that quadrant altogether. And those things that are also important but aren't necessarily as urgent: education, our health. Remember, our health are the pack of chips now. Well, it does impact our health, but that's down in the future. So that's not as urgent as our pleasure in the moment. Relationships, all those nice to haves, our preferences, travel, perhaps establishing savings to keep this lifestyle floating for as long as we possibly can. These are all important things. Are not important but urgent are all those contributing actions, and again, other people's priorities. And then the not urgent, not important are all those distractions and entertainment. Again, relating to these two, this set of charts are specific wants and needs. What is the common denominator amongst all of these? In our prosperous society, the common denominator, most people would say, is money. Now, you may think that's a rash or a frivolous answer, but when you think about it, most people spend most time, energy, and effort on acquiring money to get what they want and need. Those things that are important and urgent, those things that are important but not so urgent, those things that are urgent and not important, and even when we talk about entertainment and distractions, we want money for all of those. We see money as the intermediary to getting what we want. I've talked about this before. What happens is we take the money and we empower money, and money becomes the most important thing. Now, you may disagree with that, and in principle, I disagree with that too, because what is the most important thing? What is the most important thing, even when you're talking about wants and needs and all of the economic necessities that we talk about in our current prosperous economy? It all comes down to the choices that we make, which lead to our intentions, which then lead to our actions. Whether it's important and urgent, not important and not urgent, or either of the other quadrants, it all comes down to the choices that we make, the intentions that we create, and then the actions that we take. This is the basis. This is what money represents. Money represents human action. All economic prosperity, everything that you are doing to acquire money requires that you do something. It is human action that creates. We connect, collaborate, and create, and that is what creates prosperity. That's what creates wealth. That is the foundation of our economy. People doing things for each other. Somehow we lose that. Somehow, once we empower money, money becomes the most important thing. Once money becomes the most important thing, the game is on. The game is on. And the game shifts dramatically. The most important thing ultimately is what we do, which is driven by our intention, which is a function of our desires and our beliefs. So we make a choice. Just an aside. What ends up happening is we have this thoughts. All these thoughts are flying around in our minds. We begin to attach to a thought. Once we attach to a thought, then we build over time, more attachment to that thought, it becomes a belief. A belief then is fueled by some desire, marries up with a belief, and that causes us to create an intention. What's most important is our intention, because that is what causes us to move in a direction. Once we have an intention, we'll move in a direction that creates action. The action is our connection, collaboration, and creation. And that's how an economy works, and that's how life works. All of it based on that simple idea of us making choices, choosing the things that we think about, the thoughts that we attach to, that ultimately become beliefs. And if we believe it, that's the way it is. Whether it in fact is that way or not, if we believe it, that's the way it is. That our belief married up with a desire creates an intention. An intention then fuels or inspires us to act. Then we act and we move toward whatever it is we desire. What do you think of this idea? Does it make sense? I know I presented it in that urgent and important quad chart as a decision matrix. But what I was getting to ultimately is that we empower money, and then money becomes the most important thing. And it is not the most important thing. But once we empower money, we're playing a game. The game changes in a significant way. Until we realize that, until we realize what we are doing, we are not going to actually change the game and make it a different, more productive, more prosperous game for everyone. Does that make sense? Does that idea make sense to you? Let me know. Put your comments here. Send me a note. Let me hear some feedback from you. I'm interested to hear what you think, to see if this makes sense when I start to build it within the book that I'm working on right now. So, the most important thing, is it in fact money? If it's not, what is it? What I say it is ultimately the actions we take driven by our intentions, which are a result of the choices that we make. What do you think? I look forward to seeing you again soon.